Greetings, my name is Michael Miller. This is a Michael Miller trademark training video out to you because you're watching. Thank you and welcome. It's meant for Michael Miller Pilates licensed affiliates, licensed presenters, the Core New Core, my patrons, and anyone interested in surviving and thriving as a Pilates instructor or student. It's been very cold and full of snow over the last few days, and I feel so grateful that I can continue to do what I am devoted to doing, broadcast, and have it be under such challenging conditions outside period. So, of the 5 things, the one is just a comment in passing that doing Pilates gets me out of my mind and into the moment. Doing Pilates for me gets me out of my mind and into the moment. Gets me into being more present, right? More present. And from previous broadcasts, you've heard a lot about how we go about that, and so I'll go on to number 2. I talk about the 2 things that I have to share with you are, one is biomechanical and the other is a point of view of Pilates, a point of view of biomechanics and a point of view of Pilates. And a fellow instructor wrote to me that the term I might mean more appropriately is biotensegrity. And that led to Google definition, biotensegrity, and then Google, in terms of tensegrity, there still is that demonstration, that interactive demonstration of tensegrity on a cellular level. And in that research, though, I came across the word that I like more than the one I use a lot, which is CT is about biomechanics. And yet all the time I talk about MMP as a point of view that considers biology and physics. Biophysics. And because of the physics, because of gravity and alignment, rotation, just all of what exists in physics, whether the biology is there or not. Now, maybe this all comes out of the biology and we're all walking around in a world of physics that is just our individual or collective dream, but that world of physics that we're in has some reliability to it to take life out of being what would be feared by not knowing what comes next. It's Halloween. Like a Freddy Krueger movie. I don't like those kind of movies because they build on reality, and then something happens just beyond reality. And in reality, it's more consistent than that. More reliable than what horror movies lure you into, stepping beyond the reliability of what's real versus what's unreal. Be that as it may. I attended a lecture, a conference really, of Buckminster Fuller's at Mackey Theater on the CU campus, and bought one of his maps of the world that he signed. right there in front of me. And so, and read his book, a couple of his books are really grand. But I fail to see where where core new tension is something in and of itself that is integral. In what? Integral. The tensegrity of the structure from the structure itself. Okay, but when you get Google's definition of tensegrity, that leaves me feeling that core new tension is something other than that, because in core new tension, you embrace the physics that you find yourself in as an organism that can make rotational dynamics and interact off of those. Now, if you want to say that's tensegrity, well, okay, maybe, maybe not, I don't know. But from the engagement of oppositional rotation between the endpoints, it's through that means that the body strives for uniform distribution of load. Because of the physics involved in the core new spiral, as well as the math and biophysics. Now, I really think biomechanics, because it's about the mechanics. It's about the axes of rotation and the interaction between those axes, and that to me seems mechanical. That has adapted to and evolved into the capability of engaging itself that way. Number 3. People choose their attitudes like they choose their clothes. The key point there is that people choose their attitudes, and as Viktor Frankl in Man's Search for Meaning would be the first person to remind you that your attitude is solely yours alone to choose, and there is no not choosing insofar as whatever it is you do is a choice of attitude. I was talking about in my notes, I guess, that some people have no choice because they don't have any other attitude to exercise or to come from or to be in. That's all you have. Or the clothes you wear might be functional. As long as they work, that's what matters to you. And as long as your attitude works for whatever you want. You might wear your attitude like your clothes in terms of letting your appearance speak for the attitude that stands behind it. And you choose your attitude as a reinforcement of an image that you're projecting out of your simulation. Is that too abstract? I don't think so. I wouldn't have said it. I hope not. You choose your attitude based on your feelings, like your clothes. How you feel about your clothes is how you feel about your attitude. Your beliefs, how you believe influences how you pick your clothes, influences your attitude. in the world of physics, attitude is the position of, say, a body, and if we're talking about a body in space, whether it's a spaceship or your human body, it's your orientation within 3D space. Choose their attitude. Choose your attitude. Now somewhere between 3 and 4 is a message to Jonathan over on Facebook about going the distance. It's a song, and that MMP and the way I look at my participation in this broadcast is like the song "Going the Distance," and that I'm honing my ability long after the crowd has left, from what we talked about yesterday and email the day before, that nobody cares about Pilates anymore, and how that can be true in maybe one country or continent and not in another. So here's where I'm trying to organize a description of, on the subject of Pilates, that maybe it was unavoidable in terms of human nature and how it comes at it full of anticipation and expectation, and then finds familiarity to the point where they lose interest until the next pass of cultural popularity. In the meantime, if you're a Pilates instructor or a student, I guess regardless of how anybody else cares about it, or where it is, and what stage of popularity or presumed understanding, see, that's the whole thing too. It's a presumed understanding to where it got so boring, because you understood it, there's nothing more to understand. And so what else is there? Because that's human nature too. I think in some ways, in the relief of much of the folklore in the Pilates culture, the interest of the broader culture of humanity has moved on to where it seems like folklore now still has a sense of itself that will remain and reign over the Pilates culture in terms of what it is. And so in the absence in the United States of anybody caring about Pilates anymore, and in South America where Pilates has already covered a vast number of people in what it presents as Pilates, long after people have turned to some other pursuit, like being skinny, it's my opinion that the more you understand Pilates as something that has an essence of its own, that determines itself for what it is, the more you understand it for what it is, the more impactful you can be as a Pilates instructor, and in the impact, make your value that much more obvious as well. So I do sound like a broken record, just promoting the knowledge of core new tension and Michael Miller Pilates. Core new tension is about so my camera froze, but I don't know if that's because my buffer got overwhelmed. So because my camera froze, I lost my track of thought, and so I'll let go of this. And if it picks back up, life can't live forever, read between the lines, see behind the curtain, connect the dots. There is the buffer. See, so maybe all of that ended up getting buffered. So those two things, the knowledge of core new tension, whether I call it all the time biomechanics, someone would lead me to call it biotensegrity, but I don't so much see the tensegrity in it. But in looking at studying tensegrity, I see the use of the word biophysics. And that to me, to MMP and the POV of core new tension, we're talking about the physics that the body finds itself in and the capacities it's developed within itself to interact with the physics that it is a part of. Core new tension. It's a means to distributing the load of your body by uniform engagement. It's number 2 in Joe's book. Contrology develops the body uniformly. It doesn't say it uses tensegrity to get there, at least in my understanding of what tensegrity is. I don't see how the implementation of core new tension is tensegral. But maybe it is, or maybe it's not. But to my way of thinking, the target is uniform engagement. And in that way, a geodesic dome that's tensegral makes a uniform distribution of load. But I don't know that the human body, in engaging in oppositional rotation between axes, is a tensegral act in and of itself. It distributes the body, the load of the body uniformly. But I'm not sure the means to the end are the same thing. And then number 2 of the 2 big things is the point of view of Pilates that's unique and transcendent because it goes beyond folklore, which that's what Pilates really is. Historically, what we've got is this book, what everybody's made out of it, overlooking this book. My book is an attempt to explain Joe's book. Something that admitted by the authors, they couldn't explain it, so they came up with some principles on their own. 13 years after Joe died, and now we've got Pilates as a fricassee of interpretation. Driven by how people like to wear their clothes. those two things, the knowledge about core new tension and the knowledge of there being an explanation of Pilates that makes sense, straight from Joe's book, that will either completely reinforce what you consider Pilates to be or not. But at least it's a point of view that everyone can recognize for what it is within itself. 3 things from Joe get you to the definition of the ideal point of view of MMP. Taken from those 3 things. And then the bonus is an identification of the biophysics, formerly known as biomechanics, recommended to be called biotensegrity, but I'm reluctant to do that because it doesn't feel as though conceptually they align. And then number 5 is core new waiting in the wings. All of this talk about biomechanics is about core new tension and about oppositional rotation between axes. And that's all Michael Miller Pilates jargon or way of saying what that way of engaging your musculature is. Perhaps, and I think in a generation or 2 or 3, when Pilates is really wrung dry and everybody already knows what it is and they've made of it what they're going to make of it without ever really encountering an MMP point of view and that point of view, like somebody else's view that's better or clearer at explaining what's ideal within the method, that where you can not only hear and accept the explanation, but able to give it back, hopefully as clear as, or clearer than you picked it up. Because it's bringing light to knowledge, and the more light, the clearer the knowledge becomes. And that's why it may seem totally silly and shallow for the focus lately on being skinny. But that was such precious feedback from such a precious friend about people just want to be skinny. You know, I was getting a good, honest, sincere opinion. And indeed, if that's what people want, and if you really, as a teacher, want young students so that they can learn from you for a long time and that your teaching will live through them long after you aren't here anymore. Right? The vanity of trying to leave as good of an impression as you can that will last for as long as it can. If all they want is to be skinny, then there's nothing better than core new skinny. Because core new skinny is how you engage your muscles. That is the physics of the way your body works. It has rotation here and here and here, and at the knees and the ankles and the metatarsals. And the combination of those axes of rotation, if you want to consider those hubs to a dynamic dome in which the hubs all move and interact with each other, well, okay, maybe. But the purity of the physics isn't that complex, the way I'm seeing it. Because we're talking about the mat work and the progressive patterns of movement and the effort to seek symmetrical movement. therefore symmetrical control, therefore control through the space that we have. The two things, the knowledge of this whatever, the way the body engages itself to move through space, it's not new, it's just an understanding of how that allows you to use your imagination to engage in it on your own, and therefore distribute your load more uniformly, and therefore have a sensation of alignment between the endpoints of tension. Thank you for being a part of this, whether long after I'm gone or right there live and me not knowing about it, because I can't look through my magic mirror in YouTube like I can in Facebook and see who's watching. But that's all about observing, and that's a subject we've covered a lot, and I'm ready to go. Life can't live forever. Read between the lines, see behind the curtain, connect the dots, right? Evaluate points of view. And then from past episodes, know how to make an offer and get paid in advance. Because those two things I'm just a broken record on are, to me, two huge things. And if you take those two huge things away, enormous things away, you're in a position to share them with others. And if you do it right, I think becomes nothing more than this giant funnel of people that will want you as their teacher and instructor. And be willing to pay at a commensurate level to which they value you. It's a matter of the chicken and the egg. Until you know how to add 2 and 2 for yourself, you don't have enough to give anything away because you really don't have anything. And if the effort is to pull the curtain aside and empower others like you've been empowered, not empowering them in how to add 2 and 2 for themselves, and not encouraging them just to be able to make an offer of a presentation. Explains 2 things, of course, the broken part of the record, but in hearing those 2 things or sharing those 2 things to an audience, they're either going to be into going for core new skinny or they're not. And maybe they don't care at all about Pilates, but they might care a lot about core new skinny if that's what they get when they can envision that kind of effort, which is just the physics of how your body engages itself to move through space. Those seem to be very comfortable words. I would encourage you to use them as your own. Core new tension is how the body engages itself to move through space. Once you've evaluated points of view, then it's time to make offers and wait for someone that feels the same about your offer as you do. I'm not saying don't negotiate, but Start high and see where it ends up. Be Christopher Columbus up front and be Aretha Franklin before you begin your performance. Direct your thinking. Geist.